Welcome to Trauma Bay. They say 3 words changed everything. God is dead. But what do they really mean? It's not a celebration. It's not a victory chant. It's a funeral. A quiet, psychological realization that something central to the human experience has collapsed, and we are standing in the aftermath, pretending nothing happened. Nietzsche didn't mean it lightly. He didn't mean a literal death of some old man in the sky. He meant that the idea of God, the foundation of morality, purpose, truth, and meaning, was no longer holding up. People might still go to churches, still say their prayers, still recite rituals, but deep inside, in the undercurrent of thought, the belief had rotted. God wasn't murdered by atheists or scientists or heretics. He was abandoned by the very people who claimed to worship him. They built temples out of habit, not faith. Nietzsche saw what others didn't dare to admit, that modern man had outgrown the old myths, yet hadn't built anything solid in their place. We had torn down the old pillars, but forgot to replace them. And that's where the darkness begins, not in disbelief, but in the vacuum it leaves behind. When someone loses belief in God, it's not just religion they lose. It's the entire scaffolding of meaning. The question isn't, what do I believe now? It's, why believe anything at all? If there's no divine plan, no afterlife, no cosmic purpose, then what's the point? Nietzsche didn't offer easy answers. He wasn't trying to sell an ideology. He was diagnosing a sickness, a deep psychological rupture in the Western mind, one we're still suffering from. What makes this more disturbing is how slow and silent the death was. There was no loud announcement, no collapse of the heavens, just a gradual erosion of certainty, a fading echo in the back of the mind. And that echo still haunts us. When you take away God, you don't just remove a figure in the sky, you remove the voice that whispered, "You are loved, you are watched, you are part of a plan." Without that voice, many people fall into quiet despair, even if they don't show it. They replace faith with distractions, consumption, technology, politics, therapy, identity, endless noise to drown out the silence left behind. But silence has a way of creeping back. And Nietzsche warned that this death was not an end, but a beginning of chaos. Because the human psyche, stripped of external authority, doesn't automatically become free. It becomes lost. A person without a compass doesn't start exploring. They wander. And in the modern world, we see it everywhere. People drowning in choices, directionless, fragmented, chasing substitutes for meaning that never satisfy. Nietzsche feared nihilism, not just the philosophical idea, but the emotional reality of it, the creeping belief that nothing matters, that truth is just opinion, that morality is just social convention, that love is just chemicals, that we are just flesh and neurons waiting to rot. He didn't want people to stay in that abyss, but he knew we had to pass through it. He wanted to break the old illusions, not to destroy us, but to awaken us, to force us to become stronger, to face reality without a mask. That was his idea of the Übermensch, not a comic book superhero, but someone who creates their own meaning, who stares into the void and doesn't flinch. But very few people are ready for that kind of freedom. Most of us still want to be told what is right, still want a father figure in the sky to say, "You are good." We want to outsource our conscience, because it's easier than carrying it ourselves. We want simple answers, not terrifying freedom. So when God died, we didn't become gods ourselves. We became orphans. And many are still grieving. This grief shows up in strange ways, in anxiety disorders that can't be explained, in depression that doesn't respond to pills, in existential panic in the middle of the night, in that vague sense of meaninglessness that haunts even the most comfortable lives. Modern psychology is catching up with what Nietzsche already saw. That belief isn't just about doctrine, it's about identity, structure, cohesion. When you remove the central axis around which people organize their existence, you get fragmentation. People split inside. And without something larger to orient them, they start worshiping lesser things: money, fame, power, ideology, even themselves. But these things are fragile gods. They don't answer when you cry out in the dark. They don't offer redemption. They don't tell you why you're suffering. They just consume you. Nietzsche wasn't naive. He knew the consequences. He predicted wars, fanaticism, psychological breakdown. He saw that without a grounding source of value, people would become manipulable, easy to seduce with slogans, movements, trends. The death of God didn't make us free. It made us hungry for anything that could fill the void. And here's the most disturbing part. Nietzsche believed the worst was still to come. That society hadn't even begun to understand the full impact of God's death. That the 20th and 21st centuries would be a time of spiritual crisis, not because of religion, but because of its absence. He was right. The modern world is full of noise, but very little depth, full of options, but lacking guidance. We are more connected, yet lonelier than ever. We have more knowledge, yet less wisdom. We chase progress, but forget to ask what we're progressing toward. Nietzsche wanted something better. He wasn't anti-life. He was anti-delusion. He wanted people to wake up, not give up. But waking up is painful. It requires burning down the comfortable lies and standing in the cold truth. Most people aren't ready for that kind of fire, so they return to their illusions, or worse, they fall into apathy. The psychological weight of freedom is heavier than people expect. When you remove external judgment, you have to judge yourself. When there's no heaven or hell, you have to decide what kind of life is worth living. That burden either crushes you or forces you to evolve. That's what Nietzsche hoped for. That humans would evolve, not biologically, but spiritually. Not by following commandments, but by creating values. Not by obeying, but by becoming. But most people still want a shepherd. They don't want to walk alone in the dark. So God is dead. But the echo of his absence still shapes our minds. We talk about mental health, self-help, therapy, yet we rarely ask the real question. What are we living for? What is the anchor of our lives now? What gives our pain meaning? What do we kneel before when no one is watching? Because whether you believe in God or not, something will sit on that throne in your psyche. And if you're not careful, it won't be something you chose. It'll be something that chose you. Addiction, anxiety, the opinion of others, the algorithm, the market, the mirror. Nietzsche was not offering comfort. He was sounding an alarm. He was pointing to the ruins and saying, "This is your opportunity. Don't look backward. Create." He knew that the death of God was not just a loss. It was a challenge, a dare, a blank canvas. But most people don't want to be artists of meaning. They want pre-packaged answers. That's why ideologies keep replacing religions. That's why people cling to labels, movements, tribes, anything to avoid standing alone before the abyss. But the abyss is honest. And sometimes, honesty is the only way forward. So what now? We're left with the terrifying freedom Nietzsche warned us about. No script, no cosmic guarantee. Just this life, this moment, this fragile breath. Maybe that's enough. Maybe the death of God wasn't the end of meaning, but the beginning of responsibility. Maybe it's our job now, not to believe, but to become. Not to worship, but to create. To build lives so rich in truth, depth, and strength that they don't need a myth to hold them up. That's the psychological challenge. That's the spiritual evolution Nietzsche saw on the horizon. It's not easy, but it's real, And in a world full of noise, maybe reality is the rarest thing of all. So yes, God is dead. But now, we have to answer what takes his place. Not just in culture, not in politics, in us, in the silence we carry, in the choices we make when no one's watching. Because if there is no one watching, then everything we do matters more, not less. And that might be the most sacred idea of all.